Okay, so we're going to do section 8. It's about absolute value equations. Remember, absolute value is the distance from 0. And when we're looking at the distance from 0 on a number line, we can be above 0 or we could be below 0, right? So the absolute value of 3 is 3, but the absolute value of negative 3 is still 3 because it's the distance from 0. 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So see how I counted 3? Even though it's negative 3, it's still a distance of 3. A distance of 3. Absolute value. So now when you get into equations, when you start solving equations, when we have like absolute value of x equals 4, it's asking what number gives you a distance of 4. So that would be a positive 4 and a negative 4. So there's two answers here. And not all the time is it going to just be the opposite, right? 4 and negative 4. Depending on what your equation looks like, you're going to have two different answers. So the best thing to do is to literally write two different equations. So when we have a problem to begin with, an absolute value problem, we always want to start with writing two equations. So the first one is the same exact equation, just take down the absolute value bars. The second equation, you want to negate or take the opposite of everything inside the absolute value bars. So take the opposite of a positive 2x, take the opposite of a negative 3, and now set it equal to 5, because we want the opposite, just like it was 4 and negative 4, so we want the opposite of that. Now we can solve both these equations, so we have x is equal to 4. And here, take this one, subtract 3, you get 2 this time, so over here we added 3, right, got 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Here we're going to subtract 3, so we get 2. So we'll divide by negative 2. So x is equal to negative 1. So notice these are not opposite answers, right? So you have to literally write two equations. Also remember that taking the absolute value of a number, I can never get a negative number, right? That can't happen. So here are a couple more examples. Right here are inequalities. Treat them just like equal sign, and I'll show you what to do. So write the same thing again. So 2x plus 7 is less than 7. Okay, so there's your one equation. Your second equation, if you negate or take the opposite of what's inside the absolute value bars, oops, so that would be a negative 2x, and a negative 7 is less than 7. Okay, you can, and then go ahead and solve this, right? Subtract 7 here. So we're going to get x is less than 0. Here we're going to add 7. We get 14. 14, remember when we divide here by this negative, that's going to flip that symbol. Okay, so x is greater than negative 7. So if I was writing this answer on a number line, right, we have 0, or sorry, negative 7 probably right there. Negative 7 and 0. This is x is less than 0, so it's everything this way, and it's less than 0, not hitting 0, so it's an open circle. This is greater than negative 7, open circle on negative 7 going this way. So if I write an interval notation, then it's going to be between negative 7 and 0 would be my answers in interval notation. Okay, one thing you got to worry about is if the absolute value is not by itself, then I have to get it by itself first on one side, and then we can go ahead and write our two equations. Okay, so here you can look at this, just think about it. I'm taking the absolute value of some number plus 2, and then I'm taking the absolute value of that, right? I always take the absolute value after I just get a number by itself. So x plus 2, so whatever I want to pick, I add 2 to it, I'm going to take the absolute value, and that would always be greater than a negative, right? So all values would work here, because every positive absolute value is always going to be positive, right? So every number, no matter negative, so I do a negative 16 plus 2, that's a negative 14. Absolute value of negative 14 is a positive, so it's always going to be greater than negative 4. So all values would be true there. Okay, here's kind of a little bit of a word problem. M is no more than 2 units from 7. Okay, so M is no more than 2, so M can't be greater than 2 units from it. So M plus 2, and it can't be more than 2 away from 7. Okay, so the absolute value, because it can be 2 less than 7, or it can be 2 more than 7, right? So no more than would be greater than symbol. Okay, and we're talking about 2 more than it. So here we have M plus 2 is greater than 7, and my second equation would be negative M minus 2 is greater than 7. So here, all right, M is greater than 5, and here we add 2 to both sides, divide by negative, which flips the sign, so M is less than 9. So M has to be greater than 5 and less than 9. So M is greater than 5 and less than 9. So somewhere it's between 5 and 9, and again it's less than, so it's parentheses. Okay, so a couple more things on this. So you can take the opposite of what's inside the absolute value bars, or you could take the opposite of the other side of the inequality. So let me show you the example here. Sometimes you just got to be cautious of this, because when you do that, you have to flip the sign. So if I write my 2 equations, it could be M plus 2 is greater than 7. But if I negate or take the opposite of the other side, other than opposite value bars, I can do that. But when I do that, I just have to make sure that I flip that sign and take the opposite of that number. So you'll see here, right, we subtract 2, M is greater than 5, same as the one before. Subtract 2 here, M is greater than, if I subtract 2, negative 9. Okay, and that's what, when I should have, up here I should have, when I divided by negative 1, that should have been negative 9. Sorry about that. So see how I get the same answers there. So you can negate, you can take the opposite of the other side of the inequality, you just make sure that you flip that sign. Okay, another problem that you might have is when you do this, you might have something like this. Okay, so if you write the first equation, that's all good, right, because you just copied the same thing down. But when you take the second equation, if you don't, so I take the opposite of this, which is great, and if you're good at that, that's great. But some people that take the opposite of the other side, other than the absolute value, some people make the mistake of only taking the opposite of the first term and not the second, right? So I would have to make sure that I take it of this one as well. Right, now these equations are the same thing, these two right here, right? Because if I solve them both, I'm going to get the same answer. So this top one, we add 3, or let's go ahead and subtract. I like have positive x's. Right, so I get a positive x there. I subtract 5. So x is, so we get a negative 8 here. So x is equal to negative 8 when we solve this one. This time I'm going to add 2x to both sides. So then I get 5x. Subtract 5. Here I get 2. Divide by 5, so x is equal to 2/5. Now if I do the same one here, if I add 3x, I should get the same answer, right? So we get 5x here, we add 3, we get a negative 2. Oh, this answer was a negative 2, right? 3 minus 5 is a negative 2, so this should be negative 2/5. So then divide by 5, and look, I get a negative 2/5. So just make sure you go about that kind of the right way. The other last one is when you have the absolute value of set equal to two things. The absolute value equals the absolute value. Okay, so here, let's do a 3x minus 5, something like that. Okay, so here you can take the first one, right, the same exact one, take down the absolute value bars. And then all I have to do is negate one side. Right, so if I take negative 2x minus 4 equals 3x minus 5, then I'll have my correct answers. Right, so all I have to do is just negate one side, and that takes care of it. So those are the ways that you solve these. Again, I think the best way to do it is just whenever you take the second equation, just take the opposite of the absolute value side. All right, so you can go ahead and try these problems on page 553. Here they are, and we'll work on them in class. Okay, so any questions you have, feel free you can send me a message on Edmodo if you have any problems on these, and then I can make a video and send it to you. Okay.